Hey guys, I hope the first part of the lesson was okay and you guys are able to get through dilations and reflections pretty easily. It's a new concept, so if you had any issues, that's fine. Feel free to message myself or Miss Sim and we'll be able to help you out. So now we're actually going to be talking about translations of a parabola. So there's two types of translations when it comes to a parabola. There are going to be horizontal translations or vertical translations. Horizontal means that it moves across the x-axis, and vertical means it moves across the y-axis. So up and down and left and right. If you look at our general formula for a parabola, it's noted here. So we have y is equal to a bracket x minus h close bracket squared plus k. We've already talked about a being our dilation, so now we're looking at our h and our k. Our h represents our horizontal translation, which means it moves left and right, and our k represents our vertical translations, which means it moves up and down. Now, an important thing to note is in this general formula, it's actually x minus h. So if you have an x minus 3, for instance, that means it's a positive horizontal translation, just because of that general formula. And you'll see what I mean a bit later on. So if we go straight into horizontal translations, we'll look at this example here. So in our red one, we have y is equal to x squared, which is just a general parabola. It goes through the origin at 0, 0, and it moves up at a constant rate. Now, if we look at the blue line, we actually have x plus 4 squared. So what this is our horizontal translations can also be noted as x minus h squared. So if it's inside the brackets, it means it's a horizontal translation. So if we have x plus h squared, so x minus h squared, but this formula here shows us it's x plus 4 squared. What that's telling me is to go from a minus to a plus, our h has to be a negative, right? Because, so if I do x minus 4 squared, the negative and a negative become positive, which gives us x plus 4 squared, right? So what that tells me is my h equals negative 4, and our h represents a horizontal translation. So if it's a negative 4, that means it is left 4. So we can see in this example here, it has not moved up at all from blue to red, except it's only moved left 4. So it's a horizontal translation of negative 4. So it's moved left 4, and that's how you do that. Now if we move on to the next one, let me just rub this, that's what Miss Sim did. So if we look here, we have our regular x squared, which is denoted in red this time, and it goes through the origin and it moves at a steady rate, just a regular parabola. Now we have y is equal to x minus 2 squared. Now if we just get the horizontal translation part of the formula, it is x minus h squared. So you can see here that it's a minus in the original equation and minus in our translated equation, which means that our h is actually a positive. So h equals to 2, right? And if h is equal to 2, that means it moves right 2. So we can see here, there's been no changes other than it moving right 2 values. It still passes through y is equal to 0, but now its x-intercept is actually 2. So that's how you do horizontal translations. Let's move on to vertical translations. So we just talked about horizontal translations. I'm just going to write the equation of a parabola again. So whenever we have an x minus or a plus inside the brackets, we know that it's going to be a horizontal translation from this formula. However, sometimes you might get something like this. So you might get x squared plus 120. You probably won't ever see that, but just to give you an example. So because it's not inside a bracket, what that means is h value is essentially 0. So it's been cancelled out, and then we just have our plus k. So what this would tell me is it's a vertical translation, because our k represents vertical translations. Because it's plus in the regular equation, if it's a plus here, that means it's a positive vertical translation, which tells me this moves up 120. But we're never going to see something like that. So let's go back to it. Let's go to the questions we have here. So we see here we have y is equal to x squared. Again, that's just our regular parabola. Goes to our origin 0, 0, goes at a constant rate. And what you see here is we're also given y is equal to x squared minus 1. So y is equal to x squared minus 1. So again, because it's because there's no brackets between the x and the h, there's no between the x and the number, I know that it's going to be a vertical translation. And following a formula, y is equal to x squared plus k. Right, that's just me getting rid of the h. Because it's a negative value, that tells me that my k is a negative value, which means it actually only moves down one. It doesn't have any horizontal translations, there's no dilations as well. All that tells me it moves down one. And we can see here in the blue graph, it hasn't moved left or right. All it's done is move down one value to here. It's still the same graph, it's just translated down one. So that's a vertical translation. I'll do another example here. So we have y is equal to x squared, and we're given y is equal to x squared plus 3. Again, because there's no bracket, we know it's going to be a vertical translation, and the rule follows this rule here. And because our k is a positive here, that tells me my k is a positive here, and that means that it moves up 3. So I know it moves up 3. I can see here, it's the same graph, except now it's moved up 3 values. It hasn't moved left or right, it hasn't got a dilation or anything of that sort. It's purely just moved up 3 values. And that is pretty simply how to do vertical horizontal translations. A quick summary. This formula is something really good to memorize. It'll help you understand parabolas a lot more if you can memorize it. A represents our dilations. If we have a negative x, that means it's a reflection on the x-axis, which means you're basically folding the piece of paper downwards. If it's an x minus something, that means it's a positive horizontal translation, so it's moving right. If it's x plus something inside a bracket, that means it's moving left. If there's no brackets and it's x plus or minus, you know it's a vertical translation, and that's really about it. So now I'm just going to go through 2 of these examples with you. So match each of the following equations to one of the graphs below. We're going to do 10b. So 10b says that we have y is equal to x squared minus 6. Now off the bat, we see there's no dilations. Because there's no coefficient next to the x. There's no reflection because there's no negative x. And something that you should also notice is that it's not inside the brackets, which means it's going to be a vertical translation. So we're going to be following this formula, ax squared plus k. And in this case, our k is a negative 6. And we know k is a vertical translation, which means this graph is going to move down 6. So if we look in the graphs here, we're just looking for a regular parabola that's moved down 6 values. And we can see that it's here. So it's this one. So we can see that this is just a regular parabola. So the original parabola will be here, like this. But now it's just moved down a factor of 6. It's also given us an x and y coordinate, and this is a good way to double check. So what this tells me is that when x is equal to 1, y is equal to negative 5. So all we have to do is substitute this into our equation. So this is our equation. If I let x equal 1, I would get y is equal to 1 squared minus 6, which is equal to negative 5. Therefore, we know so I want it to equal 1, not negative 1. We know that when x is equal to 1, y is equal to negative 5. And these coordinates match up here, which means it's a double check for that. That's the graph. All right, so that's that one there. I'm going to rub this out really quickly. And let's go ahead and do 10e as well. So 10e tells me y is equal to x minus 3 squared. Okay, so looking at this one, again, we can see that we have no dilations because there's no coefficient out the front. There's also no reflections because it's not a negative x, but it's inside the brackets, which means it's going to be a horizontal translation. Now, if we look at our formula, y is equal to ax minus h squared. The general formula has a negative h, and because this follows a negative value, that tells me again that my h is going to be a positive, so my h is equal to 3, which means it's going to be a horizontal translation of 3, which tells me it's going to go right 3. There's no dilations, no reflections, no vertical translations, so it should be a general parabola if I move 3 factors to the right. So all I'm going to look is for a graph that let's move 3 to the right, which is this one here. So it's I. A regular parabola will move like the, oh, sorry, my iPad moved. Regular parabola will look like this, but this is just moved 3 to the right. It's also given us a point here, so we can double check it. This tells me that when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 9. So what I can do again is substitute my values in. So sub x is equal to 0. I'd get y is equal to 0 minus 3 squared, which equals to negative 3 squared, which equals to 9. Therefore, when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 9. And that's exactly what this graph shows me here, and that's why we just double check that. That's about it. If that was a bit confusing, I definitely understand. It's a complete new concept and you're learning online, which is really tough. If you have any questions, feel free to Teams myself, email myself, or Teams Claire, Miss Tim as well. We're always here to help you guys. Yeah, just let us know if there's anything you need further explanations on. We're happy to help one-on-one if we need to. Other than that, yeah, let me know if this video helped. We're testing out to see how videos will do for a long lesson like this, where it's a new concept. So please give me feedback. Let me know what I could have done better, if I could have talked slow, if I could have done more examples, if my handwriting could have been neater. Because it'll just help me and it'll help you more as well. Yeah, other than that, easy. Go ahead and finish your questions.